Okay, here we go. Just give everybody a little bit of time to get their notifications as usual. Super excited about what we're talking about today, which is, do you put yourself first? Hello, hello, hello. Come on in. Say hello in the chat. Let me know that you're here. All the technology is working just like it should be. All the things. Okay, so I see that notifications are going out. Excellent. Let's go ahead and get everything started. Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Heather. Most people call me Nookie. What a day, huh? In addition to living my amazing personal life, I write books, teach workshops and classes all around the country, around the world, about love, sex, romance, and kink for people of all genders, relationship statuses, orientations, and more. I have personally always been curious and adventurous when it comes to love and sex. And luckily, I've had partners who've been the same. So I've explored many facets of sexuality in loving and creative ways. And all of my experiences, every single one of them thus far, has led me to the belief that boundaries are the key, not only to saving ourselves, but our relationships. They're what take us from getting by or merely average to healthy, loving, strong, and fan-fucking-tastic. So let's get started. I'll kiss off with a quick introduction to my book and how I'm writing it. Okay. So I'm writing my new book, Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck. That's the working title right now. And you can get access to the chapters as I write and post them by registering for my Take No Shit workshop beginning yesterday. That began yesterday. Right here is the link for those of you who might be interested. And let's get started. Hello, Sert Thomas. Good to see you. Hello, Sabyasachi. Always a pleasure. So today we are talking about, do you put yourself first? Hello, KS. Good to see you. Always a pleasure. So in the chat, do you, if somebody were just to ask you randomly on the street, do you put yourself first? How would you answer? Just off the top of your head. In your life, do you put yourself first? Or do you put everyone else first? Because I think that's important. In the book, The Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck working title book that I'm writing right now, the quote that I used for this chapter is, people will learn to show up for you the way that you show up for you. And I think that's a pretty important point. Anon too says, not always. You don't always put yourself first. And KS says, it depends. Okay, fair enough. So for a lot of people, it feels out of character to make your own heart and mind a priority, to develop only relationships that fit into the sweet spot and that prioritize what you want and need out of life. So, especially for those who grew up trying to anticipate and fulfill everyone else's needs and wants, acting a certain way, wearing certain things, don't say that, make sure to say this, and on and on and on. So I'm guessing some of you right now are pleasers, right? You go the extra mile to please others. Now, Sabyasachi says, I always put myself first. Excellent. Because when it comes right down to it, that is absolutely the key to a fulfilling relationship. Now, I'm not saying that you don't consider others. You absolutely must consider others for a healthy, loving, and satisfying relationship. However, prioritizing your heart and your mind is going to be what sets any relationship far and above the average. So let's talk to those of you who maybe aren't putting yourselves first as often, right? Or at all. Like I said, maybe you're a pleaser. Maybe you were socialized to believe that your worth is directly tied to how much you can give people, to how much they want from you, to how much they need you. Maybe because of trauma. But whatever the reason, for some people, many people, putting themselves first, prioritizing themselves is hard. As hard as anything they've ever done. Right? So a lot of us, and I'm including myself in this for a good portion of my life, have spent too much time with the idea that we have to make everyone else around us happy and put ourselves aside. Okay. So, again, in chat, how many of you might have been given that message as you were growing up, or as you've been in relationships? The relationships are the message that you get in these relationships are, if you make me happy, then you're worth love. And if you don't make me happy, then I will withdraw my love. Let's see what we've got going on here. Let's see if I can clear up my throat a little bit as well. So, in case you haven't noticed, those of you who are watching, I believe that the idea that we have to make everyone else happy and put ourselves aside is absolutely false, 100% false, the opposite of what we want to do. And learning how to shift that mindset can be one of the hardest yet most valuable things you can do to change your life. Now, Anand too says, yeah, that's been the way I've had a lot of men. I make them upset after one incident, and that's it. It's all over. And that is absolutely a huge message that people send. Cosmopolite says, I feel like we get that message all over the place. 100%. And there's something to it. Like, don't get me wrong. In any relationship, we absolutely should be happy, right? We should be fulfilled. We should enjoy our relationship. We should find things that help us grow, and we should help each other, right? But at the expense of ourselves is a no-go. And that's key, because in order for a relationship to be truly successful, from my perspective, is a truly successful relationship is two people getting far more out of the relationship than they put in. And if you're constantly putting in, if you're constantly people pleasing at the expense of yourself, you're not getting that back, right? So let's talk about this. Here are some things that you might experience when you start making yourself a priority. For example, it might be really uncomfortable at first because it goes against everything you're used to. And frankly, sometimes it'll make others around you uncomfortable, even angry and resentful. Not everyone is in your life forever, and that's not a bad thing. Some are just passing through. Some are looking for how they can make use of you. And when you're not putting yourself first, it's really easy for people to take advantage of you. Now, those are the hardest parts. Now, when you start putting yourself first, here's some of the good stuff. Once you get used to it, you'll feel far less stressed and anxious. You'll be more comfortable in your own skin, and you'll feel more like you. It'll be easier to create even more healthy boundaries and to stick with them. And you'll do more of what you want to do and less of what you feel obliged to do. And you'll no longer feel bad when other people get upset that you put yourself first, because you'll realize that that upset is all about them and not about what's best for you. So Barb's says, "Hi, I must admit I've mostly had unconditional love from both family, friends, and lovers." Excellent. And that's exactly what I experience right now in my life. But it's not always been the case, unfortunately. But I'm glad that you are experiencing that. And I'm hoping that during this conversation that you'll find some other things that might jog your memory or inspire you to maybe put yourself a little bit more first, and continue growing in that pattern. Cosmopolite says, "I think people sometimes confuse being considerate with completely sacrificing themselves." I think they do. I think you're right. And here's the thing, though. I also feel that a lot of the time, um, the reason that they confuse that is because that's what people tell them, right? If you're not doing all of this, then you're not kind, you're not considerate, you're mean, you're selfish. To which I will say, yes, thank you, I am selfish. Putting myself first is not a bad thing in my book. KS says, put yourself first is twofold. You don't want to look selfish, but then again, not a detriment to yourself. The thing is to find the balance. So interesting that you said that right before, or right as I mentioned selfish. Here's the thing. Selfish is not necessarily bad. It can be. When you put yourself constantly ahead of everyone around you and you take advantage of what they have to offer. And in fact, just today, I'm gonna share some with you here. Just today, I was writing in the intro to the When Boundaries Go Wrong section of the book I'm working on. And here's what I said. I would guess that about 80% of the people who read this book, who are going to read the book, Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck, or whatever I end up fully titling it, are givers, 80%. And I'm guessing 80% of you, maybe 100% of you, who are watching this are givers. Here's the thing. At least half of you are also takers, probably more like 70%. Because here's the thing, when you live in a control or be controlled mindset, you give to those who take from you, and you take from those who give to you. So the idea of putting yourself first, from my perspective, is about how do you stop that control or be controlled mindset that we've been socialized to engage in when it comes to relationships. Barb says, thanks, I hope so too. Still feeling like I'm just entering the kink world. I really need to be aware of my boundaries. Oh, hugely, hugely, especially in kink. Although I would say that boundaries are critical no matter what your lifestyle, no matter what your relationship. But in kink, especially when things are heightened in affect, right? More emotional, more physical, more danger, more boundaries. You're walking the edge a lot when you're talking about kink or BDSM or alternative lifestyles. And boundaries are the key to maintaining that balance for sure. Okay. So hopefully I've convinced you. Okay. So you're ready to try putting yourself first, or maybe you've even tried putting yourself first in some small way to test the waters before, and you've backed off a bit, right? And the reason that most people back off when they start to put themselves first is guilt, right? The idea that the best people out there are selfless, are givers. And we want to be good people, right? And we want to be seen as good people. So let's talk about guilt. So, how do you prioritize your boundaries without feeling guilty? Because, again, many of us are raised with the message that we as humans are valuable because of what we give to others, even at sacrifice to ourselves. And it's very hard to overcome that. I mean, just look at let's not even talk about relationships. Let's just look at the world today, right? Unless you are a productive member of society, the world looks down on you, right? If you are not able to function in the world the way that people expect from you, you are often treated as less than, even for things that are completely out of your control. Cosmopolite says, judgment from others plays a big role in guilt. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A little key point I like to make when it comes to judgment from others, though. One of the primary reasons many of us are so sensitive to judgment from others is because we have given them permission to judge us by judging other people. As soon as we start breaking that cycle and realizing that when we judge others, we are opening the doors, saying humans are allowed to judge other humans, and therefore you may judge me, that's where big change begins to happen. Huge change. Hello, Cobalt. Good to see you. So, people who are raised to value what they can give others are also taught that putting yourself first is being a selfish butthole, because that's how other people make sure that you keep on giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, by saying as soon as you stop giving, you're selfish, you're wrong, you're mean. You know the drill, because every single one of you out here has gotten this message at least once, perhaps hundreds of times, thousands of times, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of times. You know the drill. And I will say, with love in my heart for you and for those who taught you this, who meant well, your parents, your church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not so much those who might have given you these messages because they were trying to use you and abuse your kindness or take advantage of you. But here's the thing. You are not N-O-T, not an asshole for putting your own needs first. You're not an asshole for setting healthy boundaries and enforcing them. You're not an asshole for saying, no thank you, to relationships and people that don't fit your sweet spot. In fact, I believe that by prioritizing your heart and mind and by creating strong boundaries, you will be able to open up and give far more than you ever did before, by a factor of 2 or 4 or 10. For me, it's probably been more like a factor of like 20. But how much is neither here nor there. The point that I'm trying to make is that once you've rearranged what you are willing to give based on your priorities, let me say that again. Once you've rearranged what you are willing to give based on your priorities, it will no longer drain you to give. You'll give what you want. You'll give what fills you up to give, what you can afford to give without stress. Because when I talk about developing your relationships in the sweet spot, I don't mean grab the first and biggest slice of cake or the last cocktail weenie or bilking some old person out of their pension, although those uber dramatic extra people in your life might try to make it seem that's what you're doing the first and 1,732nd time you do put yourself first, right? I mean things like putting your boundaries ahead of others' desires for you, physically or emotionally, or putting your values before the values that others want to impose upon you. And when we're talking about, like, for example, alternative lifestyles, kink, non-monogamy, heck, even choosing to remain single rather than stepping on the relationship escalator, holding your values and putting them first rather than what others say you should be doing, putting your mental health above others' need for drama and codependency or relationships with you or whatever, putting your life needs like your finances, a place to live, and your career ahead of the things people ask from you, and so on. Healthy boundaries are the key to all of these things. They're the basic building blocks of prioritizing your heart and mind. Now, Cosmopolite says, a parent of mine is dying that I'm not close with, And people have told me again and again that I need to go visit them without even asking me how I feel about the situation. Oh, wow. So I've had to set and maintain boundaries with people about not giving me unsolicited advice about my dying parent. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty key for sure. And that's the thing, like, people have a tendency, we all have a tendency to read ourselves into situations like this, right? So every single one of you watching and listening could put yourself into that situation and immediately start thinking about how you might feel. That's great. That will help inform your boundaries. But it does not ever give us the right to dictate others. And again, that goes into the control or be controlled type of thing. If what I choose is right for me and somebody else rejects it for themselves, do I have to examine what's right for me? Or maybe if I can convince them that it's also right for them, they'll understand how right it is for me. Hmm. Does charity without limit, can it end up in disaster? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, One of the things that, like, studies have been done about lottery winners, and one of the things that's been discovered about lottery winners is even people who win a big jackpot are often drained by relatives asking for handouts and businesses asking for handouts and so on and so forth until they often end up worse off than they were before they won. You cannot give and give and give without running out. Right? It's like when you're on an airplane and they say that when the, oxygen drops down, if you have a child with you, to put your own mask on first before you put it on the child. The reason they do that is because if you put it on the child first, you are giving away your opportunity to breathe, and then you won't be able to help the child further, right? And you need to be there. Now, even if the child starts to pass out from lack of oxygen, once that mask is on, they'll get oxygen. If you start to pass out from lack of oxygen while putting that mask on the child, then both of you are in danger. It's the same type of thing. You have to be able to be refilled before you can give more and more and more. So, yeah, charity without limits, financial, emotional, physical, whatever, absolutely can end up in disaster. So, if you don't yet have your values, your mental health, and your life needs where you want them, setting strong boundaries can give you the breathing room you need to start the process. As you start the process, if you haven't already, you'll realize that while your needs and boundaries become more important and valid and a priority to you, not everyone will agree, right? And that's exactly as it should be. Just as another's needs and boundaries will not be as important to you as they are to them, especially when they don't fit into the sweet spot of your relationship. Now, for those of you who don't join me regularly or who have maybe never joined me before, welcome. The sweet spot is this is what you want. This is what I want. And the sweet spot is where that Venn diagram overlaps. I like to talk about creating your relationships in the sweet spot. collaborating on what you both want to create the best possible relationship and love and life together, right? So, when somebody else's boundaries or needs or desires don't fit into that sweet spot because it's something that they want, but it doesn't overlap with something that you want, that isn't a priority to you, is it? And it shouldn't be. Now, by holding firm to what is right for you, you need not focus on others at all because you're not harming them. You're not denying them anything except yourself and your personal resources. Are you with me on that? When you hold firm to what is right for you, you are not harming others. You are not denying them anything except you and what you can lay claim to. And understanding that not only allows you to let go of guilt, but also to keep your boundaries focused on you and prioritizing and protecting your heart and mind instead of trying to set boundaries and rules and regulations to steamroll or control others. So, by valuing and protecting your resources, you will find that you're able to give them when you choose, when it is right, to those who matter most in authentic ways. And that matters a lot because when you want to give something, it's not only less of a cost to you, to the right people, it will mean more and have greater impact. So, speaking of kink, because, you know, Barb's had mentioned, being in kink. So here's something I like to talk about, and this goes directly to prioritizing your heart and mind so that you have more to give. One of the things I like to say in kink, especially to submissives, is that you have to have power first before you can exchange it. So, and what I mean by that are those people who go around giving everything that they have willy nilly on anyone who asks for it or anyone who shows up in their life or anyone they interact with. They don't have that power left over to meaningfully gift it to the people who matter most, right? They've given so much away that there's not a lot left in the tank to exchange. Are you with me on this? And since we're touching on kink, I'd also like to mention that for me, now you're going to want to, check in with a lot of different people and find the parts of kink and the definitions and the words that really resonate with you. For me, when I talk about a power exchange, I'm not talking about you give me your power, I give you mine. I'm talking about the submissive gives power over themselves and their lives to a dominant, and the dominant in return gives responsibility for that submissive, for the relationship, for helping to build the best dynamic there can be, and possibly to help build the best submissive there can be, right? Because sometimes that sort of personal growth is also a big part of the dominance and submission dynamic. So when you look at it that way and you say, if I give my power to everyone and everything, will I have enough left to exchange in that dynamic as a submissive? Or from the D type perspective, will I have enough power left to hold and protect this relationship and to be responsible for it? And that means making your boundaries and your wants and your needs a priority rather than spending your power on things that don't matter so much to you. So that when the things that do matter are there, you have the resources for them. Here's a real quick analogy. I am guessing that every single one of you has at one time or another had, let's say, $50. $50 that you didn't have something specific, right, to spend on. And so you bought this little thing here and you bought this coffee there, and maybe you went out and you got yourself a scone and so on and so forth. Or maybe in a day, walking around New York City, all of a sudden you realize $50 doesn't go very far, right? And what do you have to show for it? Do you know? Versus having that $50 and saying, you know what? I don't need that coffee. I don't need to buy a friend a scone. I don't need to, do this, that, or the other thing. And all of a sudden, around the end of the day, you're walking around New York City and you're like, oh, I see that thing. And I would like that. I would like to take that thing home with me. And your resources are still there to access that thing, to exchange for that thing. Right? Everybody has done this. We've all frittered our power away. We've all frittered our time away. We've all frittered money away because we didn't have our boundaries and our priorities in order in our relationships, in our lives, in our trips and our travels, whatever it is, right? Cosmopolite apparently disagrees with me because pumpkin scones. But you know what? Here's something important. And you may not have disagreed with me. I'm just dramatizing it. Here's the thing. If pumpkin scones are a priority for you, by all means, buy pumpkin scones, right? Prioritize your wants and needs. But also know, are those really a priority for you? Or is it just a spur of the moment whim? Or are you doing it because I said, hey, Cosmopolite, I'm feeling a little noshy. Would you mind buying me a sandwich? And you didn't want to say no. Right? Cobalt says, does getting honest with one's own needs help there? Yes. Getting honest with one's own needs helps everywhere. Like there is no part of your life that will not benefit from getting clearer about what you want and you need. Period. End of story. Not one part of your life that will not benefit from that. It's worth the work. And that's one of the reasons that in the book, Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck, we talk so much about boundaries and I give so many different examples. And that's the other reason that in the workshop, which officially started yesterday, it's a 7-week workshop. And I'm going to put the link back up here. There we go. Oops, nope, that's not the one. Whoop, there we go. That one. This workshop that started yesterday, but it's a 7-week workshop, so you still have time to join it. That is one of the reasons that in that workshop, I will post a ton of questions to ask yourself to help trigger what exactly your own needs and boundaries are. Because getting solid on that matters. Now, also knowing that those will change as you go through life. What you need in one portion of your life, what you needed during COVID and what you need now might not be the same, right? So knowing that those will also change and sort of keeping tabs on yourself matters, right? Oops. How do we mark the habit section? Oh, are you talking about in the workshop? Please, if you're asking about like in the actual live, right, where we have the habits in the workshop, in the Take No Shit workshop, ask me there. I will show you exactly how to do that. I'll create a video for you. So Cobalt is in the Take No Shit workshop with me. And there is a habit section where you can actually create your own habits and record them and follow up on them as part of the coaching platform. So I will absolutely show you how to make that work for you. Jan D, assessing your own boundaries are paramount when entering into a DS situation. For those who don't know, that's dominance and submission. Boundaries are sexy. Exactly. And that's why I'm using the working title for my book is Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck. Because again, when you put yourself first and you spend your power or your time or your resources only on things that matter to you, you have so much left over. And you can give and give and give so much more to the things and the people that matter to you. Do you know what's sexy? Somebody who can pay attention to you, somebody who has time for you, somebody who can sit with you and accept you for who you are and not feel that it threatens them because they have good boundaries and an excellent sense of self. Boundaries are sexy as fuck. Yeah. So as you start putting yourself first, some people will try to make you feel guilty. People are often like flaming hemorrhoids, intentionally or otherwise. Like it just is. And honestly, I've been guilty of this, and I know that you have too. Humans, right? We want to do better. That's why we're here. But we've done this, right? And when someone is used to getting something from you that you can no longer afford or you don't want to spend your energy or your power on, when you stop giving that, it will shock them, scare them, maybe, make them feel rejected, right? Maybe make them realize that they've not been watching out for their own boundaries, values, mental health, and life needs, but have been instead relying on you, using you as a crutch. And I don't mean using you like maliciously, even. Furthest thing from my mind. We learn to lean on people when our boundaries are soft. And when they start setting their boundaries, it feels like they are taking part of us away because they're no longer there boosting us up in exactly the way that we've come to expect. And you can bet the boil on your buttocks that some people will use guilt and anger and pleading and whatever they've used before and probably come up with a few new feelings they'll try to use against you to force you back into line, to control you back into the relationship that they expect and want from you. Anyone experienced that before? Hmm? Anyone done that before? Intentionally, unintentionally? Yeah, we know the answer. But here's the thing. Stick to your needs and desires. Let people have their needs and desires without invalidating them. And give only what you have and what feels good to you to give. There is nothing to feel guilty about, and a lot to take pride and pleasure in when you are taking care of yourself, prioritizing yourself, and putting your heart and mind first. Cobalt says, finding out that someone was not being honest about their boundaries also feels dishonest and can impact trust. But I think it's important to give people room to set their self. So yeah, obviously, like it can impact trust. However, let's talk about that a little bit. How many people have been told in their lives, especially when you were younger, maybe by older siblings or by family members who meant and wanted the best for you, that when you were getting into a relationship, you needed to put your best foot forward? Anyone ever heard that? Put your best foot forward. What about this one? I bet you've heard this one too. Make them love you or make them fall in love with you. These are not so subtle clues that you are supposed to go above and beyond at the beginning of a relationship. Don't be yourself, be better than yourself, right? And so you get into a relationship and you are better than yourself. In fact, you might be the idealized version of yourself for the first 18 months is usually how long that lasts, right? That's the honeymoon period. And then, because you've been giving and giving and giving and giving and giving things that you can't afford constantly, you have drained yourself and worn that down, and it's not available anymore. So, when you're in that situation, were you not honest about your boundaries? Or were you trying really hard to be somebody that you cannot sustain long term in order to receive love? Think about that one. KS says, I like the way you explain dominant and submissive. Some people are heard but not understood. Sometimes words and meanings can get twisted. Oh, absolutely. And that's pretty key. I mean, one of the things I teach when I teach about communication is that how each individual uses and interprets language is unique to our brains, right? So I ask a group, a classroom full of people, I'll say, I need 5 people to volunteer, and 5 people will volunteer. And I'll ask each one of them, Define the word love. And every single one of them gives a different answer. In fact, if I have them write it down so they don't hear anybody else's answer, the answers are radically different, usually, especially between partners. So understand that when you're communicating, a lot of communication is going to be figuring out how each other defines the words that you're using that are so important and central, like the word love, that we all think we know what it means and we use it every day. Cobalt says, "Oh yeah, had a woman literally say she wanted to be a zit on my ass and got upset when I said I'd." Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah. Let's see. Not forced manipulation is likely. You may be in a situation you did not see coming, negatively impacted. Absolutely. I mean, when people change, right, over time, and people don't often always plan for the most catastrophical things. I got it. Catastrophical things that can happen, right? In a relationship or otherwise. And sometimes those things mean that we're going to be setting boundaries that we didn't even know we had. Saying things like that teaches people that someone else's happiness is your responsibility. Absolutely. Make them love you is suggesting that you can control another person's emotions. And honestly, it's suggesting that you should control another person's emotions. Make them love you. 10 tips to make him fall in love with you. 15 ways to make sure she'll never leave you. How to make them adore you for life. I've even seen articles about like how to make sure they can't get enough of you. It's both. From within, it's a distortion of self. From the other side, it can look dishonest or flimsy, like an excuse. Oh, yeah. I mean, and the thing is that it can be both. I didn't know I was doing this, and I consistently benefit from the results of pushing boundaries, making people feel guilty, and so on and so forth. Both of those things can be true. People can be manipulative and not be evil or malevolent. They are simply manipulating using techniques that they have learned work in their past. And that's a big part of what I'm going to be talking about in the section on when boundaries go wrong, is talking about how people will say, "Oh, but they're not evil, they're not bad, they don't mean to be that way." Well, no, they don't have to mean to be that way. If they are trouncing your boundaries and making you feel less than, then does it matter if they mean to do that? Maybe a little tiny bit. But in the longer scheme of things, they're still trouncing your boundaries and making you feel less than. Right? Sir Thomas, isn't it as much not what's being said as to how it's being said, body, eye language? Yes and no. Because I'm guessing that you've been in a conversation with somebody in person and you kept trying to explain your point of view and you were using all of the body language and everything you had at your disposal to be clear, and they just kept not understanding it. What the fudge? Right? So it's a combination. It's what's being said, it's how it's being said, it's your mindset when you're receiving the information. Um, is this the best time? Is this the best location? Do we need a break from talking? right? When it comes to communication, it's incredibly complex. I run a local Discord for my community, and we have a non-monogamy channel. And we were talking yesterday, and one of the things I said is that we can't always say, somebody said, going into a relationship, you should always set your boundaries and be sure you're both clear on certain boundaries. Yes. And also understand that as humans, we can't always be clear because we don't really understand each other, especially at the beginning of a relationship where we don't have that long-term experience with each other. Yeah. And also tying the communication back into the topic of putting yourself first, how you communicate those boundaries, right? Somebody said today in the Take No Shit workshop that they're very good at stating boundaries and not yet so good at, was it living the boundaries, teaching the boundaries? So they are at the point where they are able to speak the words of boundaries, but they're not necessarily communicating the boundaries themselves as they live their life. Right? Makes sense? Like, we can often see that with people who say one thing and do another. Yeah. So, do we have any additional questions on putting yourself first? I'm going to pop this back up, this link right here. So again, this is the Take No Shit workshop. Started yesterday, but it hasn't even officially gotten the first lesson out. We've got the welcome up. We're doing our introductions. It's a great time to join us. Absolutely a great time to join us. And it is a whopping maximum, if you go and you join right now, maximum you'll pay a whopping $4 a week for 7 weeks. That's $27. But it is also a name your own price because this is the first time I'm running it. So I'm running it as a beta project, which means that you'll sort of be guinea pigs in this one. And you could get it for as low as $7 or $1 per week. And with that, you also get access to the Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck live write. It is, Barb's asked, is it live in groups? Ish. So here's how it works. We have lessons that are being posted in video and audio format. There's also written format that goes up. There are discussions being held in private forums. There are tasks created to help you get through the different things that you need to be doing on a weekly basis to improve your boundaries. There are habits. There's a habit tracker where you can go in and you can say, this is a habit I want to try out, and put that in there, and so on and so forth. And then the live write is in a very similar setup and gives you access to a lot of information about boundaries and the discussions we've been having since August. August. Yeah. I've been writing this for a while, and there are over 40 chapters up right now in the live write of the book. So yeah. This thing right here. Yeah. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. That will take you to the sales page. It's not perfect. Nothing about this is perfect, but that's why you're getting it for such an amazing deal. $27 maximum. If you feel it's worth approximately $4 per week, spend the $27. However, the next version of this, the next time I run this workshop, it's going to go up $47. Eventually, it's going to be $97 or $147 retail. So now is a great time to get in on it because there's a ton of information that I'm putting in there. Also, do be aware. I'm live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm going to start taking down the older lives, and those are only going to be available in the workshops as part of the workshop. So you're not going to get to go back and see all of the boundaries lives that I've done publicly anymore. So those will probably be starting to drop off 4 to 6 weeks after I've started. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Also, coming up on Thursday at 2 p.m. Oof, wait, where are we? There we go. Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be talking about boundaries are not rejection, they are opportunity. So, yeah, super excited about that one because we're going to be talking about how boundaries are actually redirection versus rejection. Ooh, Barb's, where are you located? Oh, Norway. Yeah, almost bedtime in Norway. There you go. Absolutely. And I like to do things at different times during the day. And I also like to make sure that everything I do is accessible even when people can't make it to the lives. So, yeah, fabulous. Okay, well, thank you, all of you, for joining me today. Again, I'm Nookie or Heather Claus, and I'm currently writing my next book, Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck Live. Join me with the link in the chat or right there on the screen by registering for the Take No Shit workshop that has just started, and we're running it for the first time. So get in there on that. And if you are on YouTube, please hit subscribe. You'll be notified of the lives. I go live at least twice a week. If you're on Facebook, make sure and like me. And if you're on Twitter, make sure and follow me. So thank you so very much. Mwah. Love you all. Have a wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever you happen to be. And hopefully I will see you Thursday for Boundaries Are Not Rejection, They Are Opportunity, or next Tuesday for Have You Ever Wanted to Kick a Puppy? So thank you. Have an amazing day, y'all.